open anymore. If you have questions, I encourage you to put them in the live chat. If you see this on replay, you have two choices. You can email me at john@johngself.com, or you can request a Zoom or a telephone call. Go to our website page, johngself.com, johngself.com, and go to the bottom of the page, and there's a link in the footer that says Talk to John, and you can schedule time with me either on the telephone or Zoom to ask any questions you cannot that you don't get answered here today. So I think that there's a key issue that what we really are seeing today, and that is, why is it so important? People think that I've always interviewed and I've always been successful, so why do I need to change? Well, in this market, to move from good to great, it is really, really important. If you don't really do that, you're going to find yourself increasingly not competitive. And so I would really encourage you to make those changes, and in making those changes, I would encourage you to recognize that there's a lot of fierce competition, that the employers are more selective than I've ever seen them, and they are laser focused on identifying value. They can, because there's so many people in the marketplace, they have their choice. And so they're going to select the person, not who has the best college degree, not who's worked at some really good health systems or corporations in the past, but who do they believe is a good fit, is memorable in the interview, is trustworthy, likable, and can deliver value. I think that's really an important consideration today, and I really hope that this really kind of clarifies it. The good to great is a really important distinction that you have to make. Now, to stand out in a crowded field, you must have a game plan. And I will tell you that reactive interviewing forces you back on your heels. And I will tell you this, having done so many interviews in my career, that is the last place you want to be. That is not a formula that builds confidence, that enhances self-awareness. If you are not confident and self-aware in an interview today, it's really tough for you to be competitive. So today in Kansas City and Philadelphia, there are a lot of coaches in meetings going over game film last week and films from their competitors in the Super Bowl, and they're all looking for opportunities to take advantage of a weakness. And I will tell you that if those guys show up at the Super Bowl and they don't have a good game plan, they have no chance. And so I want you to consider going to an interview. If you don't have a plan for what you want to promote in that interview, if you don't have a message that you want to get across in your answers, no plan, no chance. I think one of the things that a coach once told me, he said, we do this planning, we do all this work, we do all this research to try to anticipate actions and reactions. And we do that based on our scouting reports, on our game film, on our prior experience within a competing team. But in a game, no one really knows for sure what's going to happen. And that's true in an interview. But if you have a plan, that highlights your strengths. So if you have to make adjustments in the middle of an interview or in the middle of a football game, having a good game plan makes it easier. So that's why putting together a plan and having a good system for interviewing is really important. So again, preparing for an interview is kind of similar. You're going to use your experience. You're going to rely on the job summary or the position prospectus that the recruiter provides, and your research. You do a lot of research. You read the summary. You look at news articles. You look at industry publications. You look at local news articles whenever you can. You look at the 990s if they're a not-for-profit. If they're a public company, you go online and you're looking for more information there. And then you also factor in your value brand statement. That's the core of who you are. And value brand statement basically is, when somebody says, tell me about yourself, or why should we hire you? That's a succinct a notice that says, a succinct answer that says basically, I'm really interested in your job. I have the qualifications you're looking for, but more important, I have the experience and I have the record of accomplishment. And you really promote that in a 90 to maybe 120-second answer, and that's about it. You want it really succinct, really tight. So that's the BBS. And you then select illustrations for success that you can use. Things that you've done in the past that have been successful, you're going to want to integrate those into your answers during the interview. Now that's more of a how-to. So let's talk about how we can anticipate the answers. I think that's really the core. First of all, you have core and categorical interview process. The core questions are behavior and values oriented questions, and they concern really how do you solve problems, how do you manage relationships, how do you adopt to the culture that you're taking over. And you may be going into a new company, manufacturing or retail company, and you may say, okay, I'm a leader and I know what I'm going to do and I'm going to change the culture. Well, that's going to take a while. You don't do that overnight. It takes years to change the culture and a lot of hard work. And so what you have to do is show them that you can adapt to the culture they have. So that's part of your plan, and that should come out in the core questions. Again, core questions are the behavior and value style questions. They're going to want to focus on your leadership style, your communicating skills, and your commitment to service. And that's really important, particularly if you're in retail, healthcare, hospitality, any industry where you're dealing a lot with the public. Now, categorical questions are operational questions, finance, performance metrics, issues like engagement and turnover and money, where you've been able to save money. They're also going to focus on your technical skills. And here employers are testing your knowledge. Can you do this? Can you do the job? A lot of people put stuff on their resume that ain't exactly so. And when you start digging into the questions around their accomplishments, you can tell that they really don't have the depth of experience. Now, you must be prepared to provide quantifiable examples in your answers, and you must focus on the operational issues. So if you have reduced overhead, then you need to talk about what it was and what you delivered. If you're talking about in percentages, it doesn't mean a lot unless you have a base percentage number. So if you reduced turnover, a huge expense and a huge opportunity for you to improve financial performance. And people say, well, I don't have any idea what we save. Yes, you can calculate that because you can come up with an average salary in your division, and you can multiply, do the basic simple math. I mean, even I can do that. And you'll come up with an estimated number and just say, I estimate that our savings by reducing overhead was this much money. Spotify reduced their overhead by their turnover by 4 or 5 points just by allowing the continuation of remote work. And that saved that company millions and millions of dollars. So those are the things that you really need to focus on. You want to focus on having quantifiable examples. It is an absolute disaster for a candidate today, in today's market, for a recruiter to ask you a question and then you say, I can't remember, or that was 3 years ago, I don't remember. That's just not acceptable. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to be mean-spirited. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm just saying, if you want to move from good to great, if you want to move from great to elite, you have to be prepared, and you have to be prepared better than everybody else. This is not a zero-sum game. We don't give participation trophies in searches. There's one winner and a bunch of losers. You do not want to keep being on the losing side, because it causes your references to be a little squeamish because they're getting a lot of phone calls, and it attaches a certain image to your brand. Why can't this guy get a job? And I think that's really important. I had a recruiter friend tell me that, if he sees a gap in somebody's resume, he kind of starts exploring that. And if it's, more than 6 or 7 months, he wants to know, why has it taken so long for you to get back on track with a new job? And he's exploring that in a way to try to understand what this person's doing. And to be honest, there's a whole underlying issue there, and it's an important thing for you to come to grips with, okay? And that is, you got to do what you need to do, not what you want to do. A lot of people don't like networking, so they don't really network that aggressively. They network with friends. They network with people they know who are not exactly the people who are going to be able to help them. So one of the things I want to tell you that is so important, if you don't take anything away from this, take this plus tip with you. You want to start keeping a journal, because that's the best way to remember the important metrics, to remember your dates of employment in case you ever have to recreate your resume, to remember the people you reported to, remember what was said about you in some of your performance reviews, what kind of raises you got. Having this mastered record, it can be so invaluable. It might make the difference between you getting the job you've dreamed about and losing out to somebody else. And so please keep a journal. Dates of employment, the supervisors you worked with, notes on performance reviews and raises, and achievements with supporting metrics. That is really, really important today. Now, the other thing I would strongly recommend you do is keep reflections, notes about significant decisions and how you made those decisions and what the outcome was. And if you think about it, how would you have done it differently? Did you have the right people at the table? What you're doing there is game filming your performance. Sort of like at a football game, you look up on the top of the press box and you see a lot of video cameras up there. And those cameras are filming performance. And those cameras are getting video so that the coaches can review what happened, what worked and what didn't work. And if it didn't work, why not? And if players failed to meet responsibilities, they took them aside in meetings during the week and talked to them, worked them through the film to show them where they made mistakes so that they could grow and learn. Well, when you do reflective thinking, you're replaying that. You really then you replay that game film. One person just asked, what about supervisors that are no longer there? Do we exclude them? Well, you don't have to list the supervisors on your resume, but you do want to know, keep a record of who that might have been in case you ever have to go back and use them as a reference. Keep track of people. That's really part of the networking experience. Now, not everybody is going to be able to do that, but I will tell you that it's just a nice piece of information to have. Oh, who did you work with? If it was somebody that, that might be a name that can benefit you. If you look at your supervisors, the people you work for, and then look at the names in the organization, that's a little great piece of leverage to say, yeah, I work for so-and-so and he knows this person in your organization. That's impressive when a candidate can do that. So I hope that answered your question. So let's keep moving along, and please don't hesitate to ask questions and drop it in the chat. We are having some connectivity problems, but it will be available later on the YouTube channel. Another question: I had one interview with no preparation. I did not get the offer. I learned my lesson. Always prepare yourself. And again, I think that's a great question, and it's a great point. And preparing yourself is not just reading the job summary. And we're going to talk about how to do that in just a moment. But, you have basically in a job, you have basically 6 areas or 5 areas, sometimes there are only 4, of a component of a job. So if you break the job down and it's a manager over a big, huge department, or it's a director over a division, or a VP over a division. So let's talk about what those elements of the job are. You have human capital, your people. You have finance, financial budgeting, financial accountability for delivering on the budget, your budget commitments. Then you have all the operational issues and metrics that support that. You have marketing, you have customers, there may be internal, or they may be external. Customers external, stakeholders internal. Even if you're a communications department, you have customers that you're supporting with your communications. And if it's internally in communications, you're helping support the company's message with your employees. Externally, you have a whole host of characters that you're communicating with. And same with a retail operation. If you've got customers that drive revenue, that's really important. Now, in a lot of industries, you also have regulatory compliance issues, and you have corporate compliance issues. And I those are important issues. And then governance relationships, that's not just necessarily to a board. A governance reporting relationship can be to the executives that you reported to in the organization. Now, when you get to you get these categories identified, then what you do is in each category you consider 2 or 3 signature strengths that connect with the employer. You've read what the employer's issues are, and sometimes they're very specific, and sometimes you just really have to read between the lines. When you're reading between the lines, don't read too much in it. Be very careful there, because you can overstep and look kind of out of sync with what's really happening. But you want to think about, okay, I've got, they say they've had a lot of turnover. If you have some examples of how you responded to that, how you were successful in that, those are the kinds of stories, illustrations, narratives that you want to work into your answer. Okay, so if you know that, you picked out 2 or 3 examples on human capital, maybe how you eliminated turnover, you improved morale, you boosted employee engagement. Employee engagement is an incredible opportunity for you today because it's so bloody low. I think the last survey showed that it was dropped from 33 to 30%. A lot of that's the RTO mandates, but it's still low. And if you can elevate your employee engagement and find some way to manage that, and that can be an important achievement that can separate you from somebody else in terms of getting the job. So you want to consider your weaknesses as well. Now, a lot of people don't like to talk about their weaknesses, but come on, we all have them. I mean, good Lord, I could write a book. You don't want to be negative in answering that question. We call this a pivot answer. You acknowledge what the issue is if it's asked. You talk about it, and then you say, let me tell you what I have done and what I still work on today to ensure that we mitigate that issue. Because a weakness will probably never be a strength. Okay, and sometimes a weakness can be a strength, but it's just run amok. Okay, my strength is my verbal communication skills. My weakness is my verbal communication skills, and I'll put it this way: my father once told a group of people that were at our house for a cocktail reception, this kid could chat up a brick wall. That stung. Oh man! But I've really worked on that. Another friend of mine said, John's is really knowledgeable, and he has a lot of ideas about a lot of different things. He's kind of like a single malt scotch. He's an acquired taste. So when I heard those things, I said, gosh, I really got to do better. And I still work on it today. And it's not always easy. And sometimes these weaknesses are, after you've been around for a while, they're pretty ingrained in your recorders. But you want to give an answer. If you can give a little funny response, then that's great. I had a candidate once, I was interviewing him on a stormy night in St. Louis, and that was, a year after the airport there had been hit by a tornado and the water was still pouring through the roof. So we dodged puddles and got over to the hotel for the interview. And I was asking him, I said, tell me about your weaknesses. And I used to video a lot of my interviews so I could show those videos to the boards, so they could have a good idea of who they wanted to invite for an interview. And he looked up at the camera, smiled, and he said, maybe we better call my wife first. And when the board heard it, everybody laughed. And their body language changed it was so apparent. They went from the arms crossed to leaning in to listen to what he had to say. So that can, even if you have a weakness answer, okay, try to make light of it and not be glib, but acknowledge it. Be authentic in the knowledge. Somebody says, well, I don't speak Spanish in Texas. Well, okay, that's an issue, but not a very big one. You can be very successful without speaking Spanish, even in the Rio Grande Valley. However, that's an example of giving one. But a lot of people say, don't give anything negative. Well, that's kind of crazy. Because we all have weaknesses. So just use the pivot technology, the pivot process. Acknowledge it, talk about what you've done, and and then talk about how you've mitigated it, and give some feedback to, yes, I think people have given me credit for improving on that. Don't get involved. Don't get off in a 4 or 5 minute story like I've just done, but make it very focused and very succinct. So that's important. Now, you need to also select stories that are illustrative of in their narratives to engage the interviewer on what you've done and what you did at that organization and how you did it. Okay. And when you're giving the positive sides, show your enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is so important. Now, you don't want to be over the top, but you really want to show that you're excited about what you do for a living. I will tell you, I learned this when I was asked to handle a sales marketing campaign, and I had zero experience at selling. I had zero experience really working with healthcare organizations on a national level, and I even knew less about helicopters. This was back in the mid-'70s when I was the first national marketing manager for an aircraft company that set up 14 of the hospital-based air ambulance programs. Many of them were called Lifelight after a program I did at Herman Hospital in Houston. I implemented it. It wasn't my idea, believe me on that. But I succeeded because I was enthusiastic. There's an old line that's attributed to the Anglican cleric Charles Wesley, who said, if a man catches fire with enthusiasm, everybody will huddle around to watch him burn. The first time I heard it, I thought, God, that's sick. And then I realized that somebody who has enthusiasm can light up a room. And people bought from me, not because I was a great salesman, but because I was so enthusiastic, and that enthusiasm convinced them that I was giving them the right information, and it was something they wanted to do. So enthusiasm in an interview is so important. You're not so important that you can't show some enthusiasm. Now, another important point, as you're preparing for going down this form, human capital, finance, operations, you're putting for each of those categories, you're covering all the issues we're talking about here. And another important way to anticipate questions is, if you were doing the interview, what questions would you ask? What stimulates your curiosity? Okay. And the final thing that you want to do, most of us have committed the one oh my God mistake that we hope never, ever comes up in an interview. And a lot of people, it may have been 2 or 3 years ago, it may have been the past year, and they're scared to death they're going to get embarrassed. Okay, here's what you do. You can't ignore it, and if you don't address it in preparation, it'll come back to make you nervous, and you're going to lose self-composure, and you're going to lose self-awareness. You will not be confident. So develop an authentic explanation. Don't make it long. Explain what happened and pivot. Now, in healthcare, there's something called Beckers. And when people make big mistakes that, get into the press, it usually shows up in Beckers. And recruiters call that, what happened to so-and-so? Well, he got Beckered. And people, if that happens, just come up with a good answer. It's got to be honest. It's got to be authentic. Say, I made this mistake, and then pivot. Let me tell you what I learned. And then give 2 or 3 points. Don't get caught up in the weeds. And then you might add, and you can rest assured, that mistake will never be made by me ever again. Now, you say that at the end. Why? Because people have you there for an interview, or they're talking to you on video, not because they want to make fun of you or eliminate you. They're looking for a reason to hire you. So be real, be authentic. When you've made mistakes, if they ask about them, be honest. Don't swirl around. And for gosh sake, don't not have an answer that you've been working on. When you have an answer, you're going to go into that. You've covered all the bases. It's like the final exam that you really need to get an A to get that GPA up where you need it. And you go and you've prepared, you've studied for weeks, and you go in and turn over the exam paper and start looking down the questions. And you know the answers to all the answers on the first page. And then you flip over and there's a couple that you're going to need to spend some time with or give some careful thought to. But the fact that you know those initial questions and the answers to those initial questions builds confidence. It helps you be more self-aware so that you don't make silly answers on multiple choice questions, okay? Well, the same thing applies in your interview. If you're prepared, then you're going to be more self-confident confident, and you're going to be more self-aware. When you're self-aware, you can read the room better. You can see how people are reacting to your answers. You don't have to sit there and your brain's not going 90 miles an hour because you've thought about a lot of these questions in advance, and you also have stories that you want to tell. So this is a formula that I've talked about in the past. Research plus planning plus preparation plus rehearsal, and then more rehearsal plus maybe a mock interview. That's going to add to your self-confidence, self-awareness, and it's going to result in an engaging, memorable practice. Now, I want to go back and see if I can find a quick slide here. Just a minute, and we went back and I kind of blew through it because we've had technical problems today, and I really want to focus on that again. And it's this package here. The core questions are behavior and values questions, and those are questions that you just need to think about in advance. Okay, that's not really historical, but when you want to talk about your leadership style, for example, if you say servant leader, for goodness sakes, understand what that means. And then explain how it applies to you in a narrative fashion. One person I talked to in an interview once, he said, servant leadership to me means that I don't leave it at the organization. When I go out the door in the afternoon, I take that home to the dinner table with my wife and my family. I take that to the baseball diamond when I'm coaching my children, or to the soccer matches with my daughter. I take it to my church, I take it to my country club, and I take it to my civic club. I'm not here as a servant leader just for my business. I'm here as a servant leader for my company. Wow. That tells me, A, he understands what it really means. Some people use it as a throwaway line and hope to God they don't get asked about it. But that's why you want to think about these things, because if you're really thinking about potential questions, that's what it means to get prepared. You want to talk about how you're committed to service. And then on the technical side, that's where your journal comes into play. If you don't remember something, you can go back and make a reference and create some, index, those cue cards, 5x7s or whatever and make notes on the various things. Writing things down will help you remember them. So that is one reason, that I'm a big believer in the CORE categorical form that's out there. If you go look at my Substack newsletter today, we address that. And there is a form that you can download on the CORE categorical form. It is at johngself.com, and it's you just go through the courses that are displayed there. If you have trouble finding it, email me and I'll get you a copy. And it's a form that you can just print over and over again. You should use it every job that you go to, because every job's a little bit different. So again, research, planning, preparation, and then a lot of rehearsal. Don't hesitate standing in the mirror to stand in front of the mirror and practice. There's a lot of performative art in interviewing, and pacing yourself, pacing what you say, really can add impact. And that's important because clients hire people who are memorable, believable, and likable. If you're memorable and likable, and they know you've got the experience and the technique and that you're going to fit in, that builds a lot of trust. And that's who's getting the job these days. And so I encourage you to really think about this process. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to set up a free call. They're 30 minutes, and there's not going to be any sales pitch. The other thing we are doing now is we've set up a membership program. So, when I'm spending an hour and a half, or 2 hours with somebody doing a mock interview, my time is valuable to me, and I'm not priced like a lawyer. I was shocked to learn that some of the Wall Street guys are making $1,500 an hour, and even more in some cases. I have reasonable hourly rates when we price our products. We don't really work on an hourly basis, but we use that kind of as a guide. And if you are a member of our career community, it's $79 a month, but you also get 40% discount on all the coaching. So if you said, oh, I need your masterclass on coaching, well, that's $1,425 based on the time and the effort and all the prep work we do. But you can get that for probably, a $600 or $700 discount. It's 8 weeks and 5 mock interviews. And so it's a great value. If you just want one mock interview, you can get a 40% discount on that over the a la carte price. It's all carried out. It's all explained. If you want to find out more about that, go to our webpage, click the little ribbon on the right-hand side of the page, and go to the membership tab, membership icon on the far top left, and it'll take you to the course page and a video that explains it. Again, I think, preparation, practice, if you can get a friend to do it and save you some money, great. But get somebody who's going to take some time and really help you. When we do mock interviews, we give a lot of feedback. And, I know a lot of people who do interviews always complain because they don't get the feedback. And they're always kind of frustrated that they weren't told what they really hoped to be told in terms of how to get better. Now, if you have an interest, tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m., our second weekly coaching call, which hopefully will not include problems with the slides. It's at 4 p.m. Central Time. It's on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And the replay is also on the YouTube channel. Now, these coaching services, this one is a members only event. But if you want to become a member, we can get you qualified for that really quickly. There's 2 every week, so $79 a month. With 4 phone calls in a month, you get 4 30-minute check-in phone calls, 40% discount, the newsletter, and the check-in calls, plus the 2 weekly live coaching sessions. A lot of people say that was more than enough to help them get ready for going through career transition. And so that's the reason we've programmed it that way, to give you an opportunity to get access. Again, I've interviewed over 9,000 people. I've taught the course for interviewing for Global Professional Association for 10 years. So I'd be delighted to help you. Now, tomorrow we're going to focus on another challenging issue for some people, and that is, how do you extend your career when there's a lot of rampant age discrimination? And that's what we're going to cover tomorrow afternoon, so we hope that you'll join us. Here's one of the videos that I put together on this issue, and I hope it inspires you to think about, even if you're 40 years old today, the law says that age discrimination begins, the law starts covering you when you're 45. That shocks a lot of people. And you can't wait until you're 65 to say, well, I think I'll work 5 more years. You've got to take care of yourself. You've got to keep energetic. You've got to be energetic. You can't go in with clothes that don't fit because you've gained too much weight, because the younger recruiters are going to say this person doesn't have the energy and they can't do the job, they don't know technology, and they start applying all manner of stereotypes to you. Now, technically, that's illegal. Practically, it's a hard case to prove in court, and you really don't want to end your career trying to sue somebody on age discrimination unless it's just so flagrant and it's an employer that you've been with for a long time. So that's going to be part of our coverage tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you suffering through all the technical details today, and this will be up in an edited, succinct form later this afternoon on YouTube.
Don't give up, 'cause you have friends. Don't give up, you're not the only one. Don't give up, no reason to be ashamed. Don't give up, you still have us. Don't give up now, we're proud of who you are. Don't give up, you know it's never been easy. Don't give up, 'cause I believe there's a place where we